Hey guys, tonight we're heading up a mist-covered hill where a quiet, old temple waits beneath the silver hush of a twilight sky. Stone lanterns flicker like stars caught in moss, and a wind soft as breath moves through the pine trees that line the path. You take one slow step after another, each footfall dampened by moss, each breath meeting the cool air like a sigh of relief. This isn't your typical sleep story. There are no dragons, no plot twists, no dramatic awakenings, just the steady rhythm of footsteps and a silence so deep it feels like it might swallow you whole. Don't worry, you probably won't survive this without falling asleep. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always beautiful seeing where we're all falling asleep together around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that sad background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You reach the top of the hill just as the last hues of sunlight dissolve behind the mountains. Before you stands a weathered gate made of dark cedar. No sign, no welcome, only stillness. You push the gate gently. It creaks just enough to let the moment notice itself. Inside the temple, grounds stretch open like a dream. Long remembered gravel paths combed by hand, wind chimes that never seem to chime, and buildings that rest like giant sleeping cats. Somewhere, a monk is sweeping leaves, but you can't hear him. You can only see the motion, the slow arc of the broom, the pause between strokes. You realize that even the wind here seems to move with permission. You step out of your shoes and place them by the wooden walkway. The boards beneath your feet are smooth worn by generations of quiet walkers. The scent of cedar and rain lingers in the air, subtle but warm. In the heart of this sanctuary is a single room. It's not special, just 4 walls, a cushion, and an open window. But when you sit down, everything around you feels full. The air, the silence, even the emptiness carries a kind of weight, like the pause after laughter or the hush before dawn. You close your eyes. But this isn't to escape the world, it's to hear it more clearly. The Buddha once said, "Within this fathom-long body and mind is found all the teachings." You sit with that, not trying to grasp it, just letting it ripple like a stone in a still pond. The silence begins to feel like sound. You notice the rhythm of your breath, the hum of your own heartbeat. There's something ancient in this simplicity. No phone, no calendar, no waiting inbox. Just you and the space around you. so welcoming it doesn't even need to say hello. Outside, wind brushes the prayer flags, and they respond not with noise, but with movement. You wonder, can something speak without sound? Your attention turns to the oldest building in the temple complex. Its wooden beams lean slightly like elders who've given up on perfect posture. Its paper walls glow faintly from within, and a warm scent of jasmine tea escapes the cracks. A gentle laugh rises from somewhere nearby. It's brief, barely audible. Not the laugh of amusement, but the kind of laughter that comes when something true lands quietly in your chest. You stand guided by curiosity rather than intention. Your steps carry you to that building, its door half open, like a sentence waiting to finish itself. Inside, the floor is bare, save for one round cushion and an incense bowl carved from riverstone. But it's not the space that draws you in. It's the story it holds. This is the room where the silent monk once sat. They say he never spoke a word, not because he had none, but because he had too many. Too many truths, too many images, too many songs, none of them needing to be said aloud. And yet, it's whispered that he could hear everything, not just the birds, or the rain, or the breath of trees, but the ache in your heart, the joy in your memory, even the thought that flickered behind your smile. He heard the world, and still, he chose silence. You lower yourself onto the cushion slowly, like placing a feather on water. The air in the room feels charged, not electric, but aware, as if the space is watching you back, not judging, just attending. Outside the open window, a bird lands on a branch and shakes off the dew. You watch without naming, just seeing. The flutter of wing, the subtle bounce of the twig, the drop that falls and vanishes into the earth. A memory drifts across your mind. A time you sat quietly, somewhere on a train maybe, or under a tree, and forgot your name for just a second, not in fear, but in peace. Just a breath, a moment when everything else dropped away, and what was left felt enough. You don't chase the memory. You don't need to. Like the silent monk, you let it arrive and leave without a word. The longer you sit, the more the silence feels alive. Not empty, but full of presence. Like a friend who doesn't need to fill the space with chatter. Like a sky holding stars it never brags about. You breathe again, slower now. The tension in your shoulders, barely noticeable at first, begins to melt like snow on warm stone. Is it possible that hearing isn't just with the ears? That maybe you've been listening wrong, not too little, but too loudly. A soft breeze moves through the room, curling around you like a shawl. And in that moment, you wonder if silence is this rich. What else have you missed while waiting for noise? The monk left no writings, no recordings, just a wooden bell carved with the word "listen," though it never made a sound. And yet, you can almost hear it. The wooden bell stands quietly near the altar, nestled in the corner, where shadow meets candlelight. It's not large, maybe the size of a melon, shaped like a closed blossom. The grain of the wood spirals inward, as if drawing sound deep into its core. No rope, no clapper. It was never meant to be rung. You step closer instinctively, holding your breath, as though any noise might disturb something sacred. It's said that the silent monk carved this bell himself. Days, weeks, maybe longer, no one knows. What mattered was the listening. Every shave of the chisel, every curl of fragrant cedar falling to the floor was done in silence. Not just external silence, but a deep, interior kind. The kind that stretches between thoughts. The kind most of us skip over. They say that once the bell was finished, the monk placed it on the altar and simply sat in front of it and listened. No one ever heard a sound, and yet he smiled. Visitors would come from far and wide. Some brought offerings, candied ginger, calligraphy, brushes, silk. Others brought questions. What does the bell mean? When will it ring? What is the sound it holds? The monk would just look at them gently and say nothing. Then he'd bow. One day, a young novice approached him, eyes wide with worry. "Master, what if no one hears the bell?" The monk only pointed to the trees where wind brushed the branches in that hush-hush way that trees have of talking. And the novice heard it, not the bell, perhaps, but something else. The deep song beneath things, the gentle pulse of presence. Buddha once said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." But what if no words at all could bring even deeper peace? You sit beside the bell, your hand resting lightly on the floor. The grain of the wood feels warm under your fingertips, as if holding the memory of all those who've sat here before you. For a moment, you try to listen harder, straining, waiting for some hidden chime. But then you remember something softer, that real listening doesn't push. You let go, and suddenly you begin to hear things that weren't there before. The hush of distant leaves, the creak of an old beam adjusting in the night. Even your own breath, no longer mechanical, but curious and slow like a traveler, exploring a long-lost path. A story returns to you, one of those parables that always seemed too simple until it wasn't. There was once a young monk who asked his teacher, "What is the sound of the truth?" The teacher led him to a mountain stream. They sat by the rushing water for hours. Finally, the student said, "So, the truth is the sound of the stream." The teacher just smiled. "No, the stream is the sound of your listening." You sit with that now, letting it seep into the quiet of your body. The bell remains still, but somehow it no longer feels silent. Or rather, it feels like silence that is not empty, but whole, alive. You close your eyes, not from tiredness, but trust. The air presses lightly against your cheeks. Somewhere a moth taps at the paper wall, and you wonder, is hearing always about sound? Or is it sometimes about presence? You remember the bus ride home from work last week? The one where you took out your earbuds just for a moment and noticed the hum of the engine, the rhythmic breath of the person beside you, the soft voice of the world asking gently, "Are you still here?" You were. You are. The silent monk's bell has a kind of gravity. It doesn't pull you in violently. It just waits. It trusts that you'll come when you're ready. No need for flashy noise or dramatic tones. Just the steady patience of something that exists simply to be experienced. How often have you tried to fill your silence? Music shows, podcasts, even sleep meditations, like this one, trying to drown out the uncomfortable quiet, and yet here you are, still listening. You hear a rustle and look up. A cat, pale gray and impossibly soft-looking, slips silently into the room, weaving through the doorway like smoke. It pads over, sits beside the bell, and curls into itself without a sound. Its tail flicks once, twice, then rests. Even the animals seem to understand this place. Your breath joins the rhythm of the room, and the air begins to feel thicker, like velvet. Not suffocating, just present, full. And slowly, the space between your thoughts begins to stretch like dawn, stretching over the horizon. No effort, no arrival, just being. You think of something the monk might have said, if he ever had. Perhaps. When you listen deeply enough, the world speaks in sighs. And maybe that's all this bell was ever meant to do. Not to ring, but to remind. There's a small mark at its base, a faded character etched into the wood. You trace it with your finger. It could mean ear, or maybe heart, or both, because in some languages, they're the same. You glance back at the cat. It's asleep now, utterly unbothered by anything. No worries about productivity, no guilt about rest, just a body curled around a breath, and you. You breathe too. This moment feels timeless. not because it lasts forever, but because it asks for nothing but itself. No lesson to learn, no wisdom to capture. Just this, the quiet curve of now. You smile and it doesn't need a reason. Is it possible that the bell did ring and you simply arrived to hear the echo the next morning, or what feels like morning, though time here isn't always linear? You find yourself walking the temple grounds again, bare feet on soft earth. The sun hasn't quite crested the horizon, but there's a lightness in the sky, the kind of pale gray that promises warmth will come, but doesn't rush. You wander without direction, just letting your feet follow where curiosity leads. Past the mossy stones, past the old cherry tree with bark like folded silk, past the row of prayer flags whispering in the light breeze, their faded colors fluttering like breath on cloth. Then you see them footprints in the dust, faint like the memory of a step, a trail leading from one side of the courtyard to the other. Not fresh, not old, just there. You pause, letting your eyes follow their quiet arc. The footprints are light, almost impossibly, so as though the walker barely touched the ground. Not hurried, not hesitant, just intentional. Each step like a full sentence with no wasted words. Something inside you stirs gently. A question, maybe, or a recognition. Who left these? And when you bend down and brush your hand across the ground, the dust feels cool, dry. It coats your fingertips like powdered thyme. You imagine the silent monk walking this path every day, never in a rush, each footstep placed like a bow. And then you notice it, how the footprints veer slightly. Not a straight line, but a subtle, graceful curve, as though the monk was following something unseen, or maybe avoiding a beetle. You chuckle softly. Even in silence, life finds a way to be whimsical. The Buddha once said, "With our thoughts, we make the world." And here in the space between these footprints, you see what he meant. Each step, not just a movement through space, but a shaping of presence. The world becomes what we notice, what we step gently upon. The temple dogs, two old creatures with cloudy eyes, wander past you and follow the scent of a squirrel. Their tails wag slowly. They too pass over the footprints, but don't disturb them, as if even the animals understand the quiet ritual of morning. You rise, brushing dust from your knees, and begin to follow the trail, not out of destination, but respect. The path winds toward the back of the temple, where a small garden waits. Not a showy garden, no koi ponds or towering pines, just gravel, a few well-placed rocks, and tufts of moss that seem to hum with greenness. The footprints lead around one stone in particular, a large, flat one with a shallow indentation. It looks like someone has sat there again and again until the rock gave in just a little, like an old friend leaning closer. You sit. The air in the garden is still, but full, like the pause between notes in a song. You listen, not for sound, but for the shape of the moment. And slowly, the memory of the footprints wraps around you like an embrace that doesn't need arms. You think of a story you once heard, a parable told at dusk. A traveler came to a village high in the mountains. Every day he saw an old monk sweeping a stone path. "Why do you sweep the same path every morning?" the traveler asked. "The leaves will only fall again." The monk smiled and said, "I do not sweep the leaves. I sweep my mind." That story lingers in the garden like incense. You feel it settling in your chest. You think about your own path, your daily steps, the errands, the texts, the long hours in fluorescent rooms. How many steps have you taken without ever being truly present for them, without noticing the dust beneath your feet or the curve of your own movement? Maybe this is what the monk heard in the silence. Not sound, but intention. The quiet music of each moment being lived. You close your eyes, letting your breath soften again. You remember the shape of the footprints, how they curved, not toward a goal, but around something precious, like kindness, like attention. A tiny fly buzzes past your ear and continues on. Even here, life makes its little declarations. You smile. Everything belongs. You let your mind wander softly, not drifting, but floating. There's a difference. Is every step we take leaving a mark, even if we don't notice? And if so, what kind of mark do you want to leave? You think of the monk's footprints, how light they were, not because he was weightless, but because he carried nothing extra. No guilt, no rush, no heavy armor of identity. Just one step, and then another. You place your own foot gently onto the path beside his. It doesn't match perfectly, but it doesn't need to. You're not copying, you're listening. The gravel shifts softly beneath you. A bird overhead begins its morning call, high and clear. And for the first time in a while, you don't hear it as background noise. You hear it as invitation. You don't walk quickly. You don't worry about where the path ends. You just move forward, one breath at a time. And with each step, you whisper, not aloud, but in your body, "I am here," not as a proclamation, just as a noticing. The footprints begin to fade the farther you go. Dust reclaims them slowly, as it should. You smile again. Not everything needs to last to be real. You pause. Place your hands together and bow not to a person, but to the moment, to the path, to the steps that came before you, and maybe, just maybe, to the ones still to come. It's mid-morning now, though here, even time seems to walk slowly. You've circled back toward the tea house, a small open-air room with a low wooden bench, sliding paper doors, and a view of the garden that feels deliberately unfinished. A single bamboo stalk leans at an angle that could only have been left on purpose, too elegant to be random, too asymmetrical to be planned. You step inside. The tea house has no door, only the gentle invitation of an open threshold. No need to knock. The place invites you with stillness. Inside, a monk is preparing tea. Not the silent monk, perhaps, but someone who understands the same language of quiet. He doesn't look up, and you don't need him to. His motions are slow, careful, lifting the kettle, wiping the cup, pouring hot water into the pot to warm it, then pouring it out again. You recognize something in his rhythm, the same quality as the footprints, the same shape as the silence around the bell. Attention, reverence. You settle onto the mat beside a low table and glance around. There's only one cup. The monk turns the cracked bamboo teacup in his hands. It's smooth and aged, with a fine split along the rim. The crack doesn't seem to bother him. In fact, he runs his thumb gently over it, as if thanking it for being there. When he pours the tea, the steam curls upward like breath released after a long sigh. You watch it dance, ephemeral and free. The cup is placed before you two, hands a bow of the head. Still no words, but you feel spoken to. The tea smells faintly of toasted rice and wildflowers. You lift the cup. The crack is just visible, running like a thread of gold through the simple green glaze. You sip. Warmth spreads through your chest, soft and quiet. The flavor isn't intense. It's light, delicate, with a slightly sweet finish. But somehow, it tastes like something you've always known. The Buddha once said, "As a lotus flower is born in water, grows in water, and rises out of water to stand above it, unsoiled, so I, born in the world, raised in the world, having overcome the world, live unsoiled by the world." You look at the cracked teacup again. It's not broken. It's beautiful because of the crack. It holds the tea anyway. Maybe even better for having once been fragile. You think of the things you've tried to hide. Scratches in your confidence, fractures in your plans, chipped places in your self-image. How hard you've worked to polish it all away. But this cup, it reminds you that you don't need to be flawless to be whole. You only need to hold what matters. A story drifts in with the steam of the tea. There was once a woman who carried water every day from the river to her home, using 2 clay pots tied to a bamboo pole. One pot was perfect. The other had a small crack. By the time she reached her house, the cracked pot had lost nearly half its contents. The perfect pot boasted, "I deliver every drop." The cracked pot hung its head. One morning, the woman smiled and said, "Look at the path." Flowers bloomed along the side where the cracked pot had dripped water. "You've been watering them all this time," she said. The monk across from you places his own cup down and gazes into it, not for answers, just to enjoy the reflection of light on liquid. You do the same, and suddenly the cracked rim doesn't look like a flaw. It looks like a story, a place where life seeped in. You take another sip. The tea is cooler now, softer, but still comforting. You glance out into the garden again. That leaning bamboo stalk catches your eye once more. It isn't upright, isn't symmetrical, but it holds a certain grace, a kind of dignity in its off-centeredness. You wonder, is imperfection really a flaw, or is it the proof of living? You look down at your own hands, remembering the times they've trembled or failed to hold something you loved. But they're still here, still able to hold warmth, still able to offer, to touch, to open. And maybe like the teacup, that's enough. The monk finally speaks, his voice so soft it feels like a whisper between 2 breaths. "This cup has cracked many times," he says, "but it has never stopped serving." He smiles. You nod and set your cup down gently, like placing a candle on water. The monk stands and leaves his steps, making no sound. Just the whisper of fabric, the hush of a body moved by intention. You remain watching the last of the tea cool in the cracked cup. And in that stillness, you don't feel sad. You feel honored, as if this quiet moment was a gift wrapped in steam and bamboo. What if the parts you try to hide are the parts that make your presence most beautiful? The breeze brushes through the tea house, stirring the paper screens. Somewhere nearby, wind chimes give a soft, almost imperceptible sound. Not a song, but a suggestion, a shimmer of movement. You let the question stay with you, not to be answered, but to be lived. The cup remains on the table, empty now, but not without meaning. Like you, later in the day, as the sun drapes its warm gold across the temple rooftops, you find yourself standing beside a long line of laundry. Robes, crimson, saffron, and muted ochre flutter on the breeze like prayer flags stretched across time. The air smells faintly of soap and sunshine. You reach out gently and let the hem of one robe slip between your fingers. It's light, worn, and soft from countless washes. You remember now the wind in the robes, It's something the silent monk was known for. Not his teaching, not his walking, not even the way he listened, but how his robe moved in the wind. Some said it wasn't really the wind, that the robes moved to a rhythm of their own, like a reed that dances even when the air is still. Others believed it was the monk's breath, so in tune with nature that the fabric swayed with every exhale. You stand quietly, watching the robes wave gently. There's something mesmerizing about it. A slow rhythm, like waves brushing the shore, or the rise and fall of someone sleeping deeply. And then, so quietly, it nearly passes you by. You notice it, your own robe. The simple wrap the temple lent you moves too. Not much, just a whisper of a lift. But it's enough. Enough to remind you that even when you feel stuck, even when the world seems still, something is always moving. The Buddha once said, "Just as a candle cannot burn without fire, men cannot live without a spiritual life." And sometimes you think that spiritual life is as simple as the way a robe catches the wind. You take a slow breath and begin to walk. The robes sway beside you like companions. There's no need to speak. Just move. Just be moved. At the edge of the courtyard, you find an old woman kneeling with a basket folding dry robes. Her hands are steady. Every fold is precise, respectful. You sit nearby, not to help, but to learn. The way her fingers press the cloth, the way she smooths each crease. She doesn't rush. She doesn't pause. She folds like she's offering each robe back to the wind that danced with it. She looks at you with a small smile. "The robe teaches," she says softly, "if you let it." You nod, unsure what that means yet, but already beginning to feel it. She holds up a robe, stretches it flat between her arms. "See how it bends," she says. "The wind doesn't fight. The robe doesn't resist. They move together." You watch her hands fold the fabric again, corner to corner. "People want to be strong like stone," she says, "but stone breaks. Wind does not." She places the folded robe in the basket and gestures to one still swaying in the breeze. You walk over and gently unpin it. The cloth flutters against your arm, light as thought. You bring it to her. She nods in approval and teaches you how to fold. It's not complicated, but it requires presence. You try. Your first fold is crooked. The second, better. The third, she nods. That's it. You fold in silence. The rhythm calms your thoughts. The creases mirror the lines of your own softening. A memory rises, standing in front of your closet, at home, rushing to choose the right outfit for a presentation, a date, a photo, clothes worn like armor. Here, Robes are worn not to impress, but to disappear into simplicity, into intention, into ease. There's something humbling about it. You glance up at the robes still fluttering above. They seem to dance more freely now that you've stopped trying to understand. Maybe that's the point. Some things teach best when you stop trying to learn. You remember a short story the monk never told, but somehow lived. A traveler came to a bridge where the wind was fierce. A flag flapped wildly above. "The flag moves," the traveler said. "No," replied a nearby monk. "The wind moves." An old master overheard and smiled. "You are both wrong. It is your mind that moves. You let that swirl in your chest like a breeze in the folds of your robe." The old woman pats your hand gently. "You'll understand more as you forget more," she says. Then she gathers her basket, bows lightly, and walks away. Robes in arms, hair in the wind, you stand once more, letting your own robe ripple around you. It's not a dramatic flutter, just a soft, easy lift. A reminder that letting go doesn't mean falling. It often means being carried. You ask yourself, what am I holding too tightly that might actually want to move? You don't answer. Not yet. You just walk, letting the robe guide you. Each step like a brush stroke on the canvas of the afternoon. As you pass under a tall pine tree, your robe catches on a branch. Not sharply, just a nudge, a pause. You free it gently and continue on smiling. Even the trees want to say hello. You return to your room as the sun begins its descent. The sky wears its softest colors, now pale lavender, dusty orange. You hang your robe on a hook and watch it settle into stillness. And even though it no longer moves, you know now it remembers the wind. Evening has arrived gently, like a silk scarf sliding across the sky. You step outside your room and follow the soft glow of lanterns that have begun to bloom along the temple paths. Their light is not bright, not meant to pierce the dark, only to meet it with warmth. A kind of hush in the shape of a flame. The air smells of sandalwood and pine resin. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird calls once and then goes quiet again, as if offering a single note to remind you the world is still singing, even in rest. You follow the path to the upper courtyard, where lanterns beneath the moon sway on hooks made of bamboo. Some are painted with gentle symbols, a lotus flower, a wave, a tree with no leaves. Each one glows with a golden pulse, like breath slowed to its softest rhythm. You find a bench and sit, not because you're tired, but because something in you wants to listen again. Above, the moon has risen, full and clear. Its light bathes the stone steps turning them silver. The clouds part around it, like old friends, giving it space to shine. You've seen full moons before, but this one feels more like a presence than a thing. A companion, quiet and enduring. There's a quote from the Buddha that comes to you now, uninvited, but welcome. Thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. You look at the lanterns again, each lit from another, each holding the same flame. And yet, not one is the same. Some flicker, some stand steady, some lean slightly as if listening. You remember a story someone once told you over tea about a monk who lit a single candle every night and placed it at the edge of the temple wall. He never said why. When he grew old and could no longer climb the stairs, he gave the candle to a young novice and said, "Place it there each night, even after I'm gone." The novice did. Years passed. Then one night, a traveler arrived. Lost and weary, he stumbled into the temple courtyard just as the candle's light flickered into view. It guided him softly like a hand in the dark. He never forgot that light. You smile, letting that story glow quietly in your chest. Not every offering needs a purpose. Some kindnesses are simply placed like candles for someone who might come later needing their light. The lanterns here seem to carry that same energy. Delicate acts of care, not for performance, but for presence. As you sit beneath the moon, a soft breeze rustles the trees nearby. The leaves shimmer, catching both lantern light and moonlight. And for a moment, it's hard to tell which is which. They blend into a soft, silver hush that you feel not just in your ears, but across your skin. A monk passes by, carrying a small pail. He dips his fingers into it and sprinkles water onto the stones. You realize he's damping the path, not for cleaning, but to keep the dust from rising, so that the night can remain still, so the silence won't be disturbed by footsteps. You watch him with quiet wonder. This is what compassion looks like here. Not grand gestures, but subtle care. A watered path, a lit lantern, a robe folded just so. You inhale slowly, then let it go. The night enters your lungs like velvet. You feel your shoulders soften, your jaw unclench. You hadn't even realized you were holding anything. But now, under this soft light, things begin to loosen. You wonder, could compassion be as simple as noticing what helps someone breathe easier? Another lantern nearby flickers briefly, then steadies. It reminds you of yourself, how often your light feels unstable. But like this lantern, maybe it's enough to stay lit, even when you waver. You reach into your pocket and find a smooth pebble you picked up earlier from the garden. Just a small thing. You place it beneath the nearest lantern not for anyone in particular. Just an offering, just a pebble saying I was here. I noticed. You think back to the robe in the wind, the crack in the teacup, the echo of silent footsteps, each one a whisper of this same truth. Nothing needs to be loud to be real. A small moth dances near your shoulder, drawn by the warm light. It hovers, then flits away again. Even it seems respectful of the quiet. You stand slowly stretching without tension. The air kisses your skin cool and kind. Before heading back, you bow gently to the lanterns. You're not sure why. It just feels right. A way to thank them for doing what they do, for simply being soft light in a dark world. You turn once more toward the moon. She's higher now, a little smaller from this angle, but just as serene. You wonder how many others are looking at her right now, across oceans, across cities, across silence. Maybe they too are lighting lanterns inside their hearts. Maybe they too are softening into the night. And you walk slowly back to your room, feeling lighter. Not because anything has changed, but because now you see the light that was always there, and that's enough. Morning returns without fanfare. No trumpet of birdsong, no blinding burst of color, just a quiet lifting of the sky, like a curtain slowly drawn. The air is cooler today, with a gentle mist that wraps around the temple roofs like silk. You breathe it in, and it feels soft, as if the day itself wants to be gentle. You wander without direction, as you've grown used to doing here. The paths are familiar now, though they never look quite the same. Stones you stepped over yesterday seem arranged differently. Trees you passed before lean in new directions. Nothing is stuck here, not even the scenery. By the time your feet stop, you're standing before one of the oldest buildings on the grounds. You hadn't noticed it before. Its doors are not locked, just closed. The wood is dark, aged with time and weather. Ivy clings to the corners. It feels private, but not forbidden. More like a secret that trusts you to keep it. You slide the door open slowly, and the scent of old paper greets you. Dust, ink, cedar, and time. Inside, you find the empty scroll. It hangs on the far wall. Suspended from two thin cords, the scroll stretches nearly to the floor. Its fabric is thick and slightly yellowed, and it is utterly blank. Not a single word, not a single brush stroke. You tilt your head, uncertain. Surely something was meant to be written there. Maybe it faded. Maybe it's unfinished, and yet you feel something standing before it. Not confusion, not disappointment, but presence. The way one might feel in a vast field after snow. Still, open, whole. You take a seat on the cushion laid neatly before it. The room is otherwise empty. No bells, no incense, no altar. Just the scroll. And you. The Buddha once said, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form." You've heard the words before. They sounded poetic, philosophical, maybe even abstract. But now, sitting here staring at this blank scroll, they feel different. Not abstract at all. Not distant. Just true. You remember something a novice once asked the silent monk. "Why do you not write your teachings down?" The monk simply held up an empty scroll and smiled. The novice frowned. "But how will we remember them?" The monk bowed his head and said nothing. Later, the novice wrote pages and pages of reflections about that moment, trying to capture the teaching. But over time, each sentence felt further away from the truth. One day, he burned the writings and sat again before the empty scroll, and finally, he understood. You think about your own life, all the times you've tried to fill space, conversation schedules, plans, noise, as if emptiness were something to fear, as if a blank page meant failure, as if silence meant something was wrong. But this scroll tells another story. Maybe the most profound wisdom can't be written. Maybe it must be felt in the gaps, in the quiet, in the places where nothing is being said, but everything is being offered. You lean forward slightly, gazing closer. The scroll's texture is visible now. The tiny weaves of the fabric, the way light catches on its surface. You begin to see things in the blankness, not hallucinations, just hints, movements of your own mind made visible, a flicker of memory, a question you've been avoiding, a truth you already know rising to meet you in the silence. You ask yourself, what do I fill my life with? And what might arise if I left just a little more space? There's no rush to answer. You sit in the stillness. Then a small breeze brushes through the open door, rustling the scroll ever so slightly. It sways, moves, then stills again. Even it, you realize, breathes. A story comes to mind, a simple tale told in half smiles and half truths. A student asked Master, "What is enlightenment?" The Master held up a blank sheet of paper and whispered, "This, before you write your name on it." You sit with that. So much of your identity, your effort, your anxiety comes from what you think should be written, what you should become, how your life should look. But what if the greatest freedom is not in what you write, but in what you're willing to leave unwritten? Outside, a bird lands on the windowsill, then takes off again without a sound. It leaves nothing behind, not even a feather. But you feel its presence. Linger. The scroll, too, asks for nothing. And in that asking nothing, it gives everything. Eventually, you rise quietly. You don't bow this time, not out of disrespect, but because even that feels like a kind of punctuation. And the scroll asks only for space. You slide the door closed behind you. The air outside feels lighter. You walk back slowly, your breath deeper. Now, your thoughts more spaced out, like clouds drifting. Rather than clinging, you remember the feeling of the scroll, the openness, the invitation, and you wonder gently, is emptiness really empty? Or just waiting to be heard? The afternoon has grown lazy. The sun stretches long shadows across the stone paths, and the cicadas begin their gentle chant in the trees. You walk slowly, your sandals tapping softly with each step. The rhythm has changed, less the pace of movement and more the pace of watching, of noticing. And that's when you see it, a single yellow leaf. It clings to a branch of a small ginkgo tree at the edge of the meditation garden. All around it, others have already fallen, scattered across the mossy ground like tiny golden boats waiting to drift. But this one remains, slightly curled, its edges browned by time. It trembles gently in the breeze, but doesn't let go. You stop. The image catches you. It isn't remarkable at first. Just a leaf, just a tree, but somehow it feels like a conversation. You sit on a nearby stone bench and watch. The wind comes and goes in sighs. The tree sways. The leaf dances, but doesn't drop. There's no urgency here, no tension, only waiting. And trust. You remember something. The silent monk was once asked by a traveler, "Why do you sit for so long each day?" The monk didn't answer. Not at first. He simply held up a leaf still green then and waited. After a long silence, the traveler whispered, "You're waiting, like the tree waits to let go." The monk smiled. You watch the yellow leaf shift again, its motion soft and almost shy. You can't tell if it wants to fall or if it's simply not time yet. The Buddha once said, "Everything that has a beginning has an ending. Make your peace with that, and all will be well." But what he didn't say, what maybe the leaf is saying, is that the ending doesn't need to be rushed. Letting go can be patient, gentle, perfect in its own time. You start to notice other small details around you. The whisper of bamboo leaves in the distance, the curve of a snail's trail across the path, the way sunlight slants through the trees like golden threads. Everything is waiting for something, and nothing is in a hurry. You let your back rest against the stone. You feel the coolness through your robe. You let your hands fall loosely into your lap. And for the first time in a while, you don't wonder what comes next. You just wait. With the leaf, another story comes to mind, an old one. A child once asked his grandfather when the apples would fall from the tree. The grandfather smiled and said, "When the tree is ready." But how does it know the child pressed? The old man said, "The apple doesn't fall because the tree pushes it. It falls because it has finished being held." You look up again. The leaf still clings, but something about it seems looser now, as if your quiet attention has given it permission to rest. And you think of your own life, the things you're holding, the thoughts, the plans, the worries. What are you still clinging to? Not out of need, but out of habit. What has finished being held? You don't try to answer, but you feel the question settle in your chest, soft as wind. You sit longer than you expected to. The minutes stretch and blur. The leaf sways again, and for a heartbeat, you think this might be the moment, but it's not. Not yet. And that's okay, because sometimes peace doesn't come from the fall. It comes from the waiting, from the trust that when it's time to let go, you will, and not a moment before. A few small birds hop nearby, pecking at the moss for tiny insects. They don't look up at you. They don't seem to mind your presence. You feel like part of the garden now, not a visitor, just another being waiting in the stillness. A breeze stirs again, stronger this time. The leaf lifts slightly, spins halfway around its stem, and settles again. You breathe with it. A slow inhale, a slower exhale. No one else is around. The temple is quiet. Even the cicadas seem to pause for a moment. You wonder in the stillness, is letting go truly a loss or a return? The leaf remains, but now you're no longer watching for it to fall. You're simply sharing its presence. You stand finally with care, as if not to disturb the balance of the moment. You walk on slowly, feeling each step connect with the earth. And as you round the corner of the garden, you don't look back, not because you're done with the leaf, but because it's done teaching you. For now, somewhere behind you, it still waits, and so do you. Clouds gather softly in the sky as the afternoon deepens. The air grows cooler, and a hush seems to stretch across the hills. A hush that smells faintly of rain. You step outside again, drawn not by urgency, but by instinct, something calling you without words. The path you follow is quiet, lined with moss-covered stones and tiny wildflowers you hadn't noticed before. Your pace slows, not because you're tired, but because something in the moment asks for reverence. Beyond the trees, you reach the edge of the temple grounds, where the earth slopes gently down toward a narrow stream. And there you see it, a single raindrop falling onto the water. Just one. It ripples outward in perfect circles, touching everything in its path. You sit on a nearby rock, worn smooth by years of weather, and watching. The first few drops begin to fall more steadily now. The sound is soft, barely more than a whisper, as if the sky is exhaling. The stream before you moves slowly, like a ribbon unrolling from a quiet hand. Each raindrop that touches it becomes part of it, without resistance, without fanfare. You watch as one small leaf lands in the stream and begins to drift. It spins slightly, caught in the soft current. You follow it with your eyes as it floats slow and aimless, yet never still. And you remember the phrase, "The raindrops return." The Buddha once said, "All conditioned things are impermanent." When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. And here beside this gentle stream, that wisdom doesn't feel harsh. It feels kind, accepting, like a truth that doesn't need to shout. You reach down and touch the surface of the water. It's cooler than you expected, alive. It slips between your fingers like time. You think of the journey a single raindrop takes, rising from sea to cloud, carried by winds. It never chose, falling onto mountaintops, rooftops, forgotten roads. And then this, a return to the stream, a reunion with what it never truly left. You sit with that. How often have you fought your own journey, resisted where life has carried you, tried to control the flow, when all you needed was to trust it? You close your eyes and listen. The rain falls gently now, steady and soothing. The stream gurgles softly over stones and roots, each sound distinct, yet somehow all part of one breath, one movement. A story from the temple comes to mind. A monk once took a novice to the top of a high cliff overlooking the ocean. The novice said, "It's beautiful, but I feel small." The monk smiled. The drop is not smaller than the sea. It is the sea simply in a different form. You let that settle deep within you. Your worries about being enough, being in the right place, doing the right things, they begin to loosen like knots soaking in warm water. What if you've never truly been lost, just moving like the raindrop toward your return? A breeze stirs the trees above, shaking a few more drops loose from the leaves. They fall onto your shoulders, your hands. Cool kisses from the sky. You welcome them. You sit longer than you meant to. The stream hums beside you, soft and steady. And you begin to feel like a raindrop yourself, quietly in motion, part of something larger, not needing to know where you're going to know your home. Eventually, you rise and stretch slow and wide. The rain is barely more than a mist now, like the breath of the earth wrapping around you. Your robe is damp, but not cold, just enough to remind you that you're real. You walk along the stream, following its winding path. It leads through a small grove of trees, then slips away behind a hill. You don't chase it. You simply walk parallel to it, for a while knowing it's there, even when you can't see it. And then you pause. A large, flat stone rests near the water's edge. You kneel beside it, cupping your hands to gather water. You bring it to your lips and drink. It tastes like mountain air, like cool morning silence, like everything soft and ancient and clear. And as you sit back, you ask yourself, what would it feel like to stop resisting and simply flow? You don't need the answer right now. You just need the question and the feeling of it soaking into your bones. You bow gently to the stream, not for ceremony, but for thanks, for reminding you that returning is not about going backward. It's about coming home to what's always been waiting for you. The path bends back toward the heart of the temple, but now it feels different. Not because it's changed, but because you have. You've moved through raindrops, empty scrolls, trembling leaves, and something in your chest feels less heavy. Not empty, just quieter. As you approach the inner courtyard, you notice a gate you hadn't seen before. It's not grand, just a simple wooden structure set between two stone lanterns. The frame is old, carved from dark wood, smoothed by the passing of many hands. There's no sign, no marking, only a small bench beside it and a low arch beneath it. You step closer, drawn in by a kind of still gravity. The gate that opens inward. At first glance, it looks like a gate to another garden, or perhaps a hidden path behind the temple. But as you move toward it, something shifts. A strange awareness comes over you. Not disorienting, but deeply personal. You pass beneath the gate, and the world pauses. Not in a dramatic way. The birds still chirp. The wind still hums. But you pause. Inside. Like your breath has turned to silk. Like your thoughts have stepped off stage. There's no different scenery on the other side. Still the same trees, stones, the curve of the hillside. But everything feels more felt, more real. As if the gate wasn't for moving between places, but for moving into yourself. You sit down on a flat rock just past the gate, not because someone told you to, but because the moment itself invited you. The Buddha once said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." And now you see what he meant, not as an idea, but as a place, a gate that opens inward. You close your eyes, letting your senses sharpen. You feel the breeze move across your skin, not just as air, but as touch. You hear the distant stream, not as background sound, but as a conversation. You become a listener again. There's a folk story whispered around the temple, never written down, only passed from one sitter to the next. They say that long ago, a young monk stood at this very gate, unsure whether to stay or leave the temple. He wanted to learn to grow, to do something important. But every day felt too slow, too quiet. Nothing happened here. No miracles, no signs. So he asked the master, "When will the gate open to my purpose?" The master pointed to the gate and said, "It already did." The young monk frowned. "But I walked through it many times. There's nothing beyond it but the same garden." The master smiled. "That's because it's not the world that changes when you pass through the gate. It's your attention. You sit with that now, breathing slower, deeper. You think of all the gates you've looked for in your life. Big changes, grand awakenings, career milestones, spiritual fireworks. But maybe the most powerful gates aren't for going out or in, but for turning gently toward what's already here, already alive in you. The breeze picks up again. You feel it move not just around your body, but through it, through the space between your thoughts. You ask yourself, what if the doorway to peace has always been open? And I just haven't noticed. I've already stepped through. You open your eyes slowly. The trees look the same. The ground, the path. But your gaze is steadier, like the lens has shifted ever so slightly, bringing everything into a deeper focus. You place your hands on your knees and bow not in performance, not for ritual, but out of deep respect. Not for the gate, not even for the place, but for your awareness of it. You begin to walk again this time, not toward any destination. Just walking. Just placing one foot in front of the other, like pouring tea, like folding cloth, like drawing breath. The temple bell does not ring. The world does not shift beneath you. And yet, everything feels different. You glance back once at the gate. It hasn't moved. But something inside you has. And you wonder gently, how many times have I walked past the door to myself without ever stepping in? Now with each breath, each step, you carry the gate with you, not as wood or frame or symbol, but as openness, a quiet willingness to return again and again to the stillness inside. You continue on, not away from the temple, but deeper into it, not outward, but inward. The gate stays behind, but the peace walks with you. The path curves once more, leading you toward a hilltop terrace that opens to the wide evening sky. The sun has lowered into that soft, amber stage where light becomes honey and shadows stretch like long, slow thoughts. You climb the wooden steps, each one creaking slightly under your feet, not in complaint, but in greeting. At the top, a wide open space welcomes you. There's nothing elaborate here, just a stone bench, a wooden bowl placed carefully on a small pedestal, and the sky, vast and unfolding above. You move closer to the pedestal and peer into the bowl. It's filled with water, still, clear, and it reflects the sky. You lean in, and for a breathless moment, it looks like the bowl is holding stars. Tiny pinpricks of early starlight mirrored perfectly in the water's surface. And you realize it is the bowl of stars. You sit on the bench, letting your eyes adjust to the deepening blue. The wind brushes your cheek, cool now, like the gentle hand of night, preparing you for sleep. You look again at the bowl. It doesn't shimmer. It doesn't glow. But it holds. It holds. The Buddha once said, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." You sit with it, watching the sky change color inside the bowl. It's not just reflecting, it's becoming. The bowl doesn't add anything. It doesn't distort. It simply allows. And perhaps that's the teaching. You remember a story told once during a moon viewing ceremony. A novice came to the master frustrated with meditation. "My mind is noisy," he said. "Thoughts fly around like birds, and I can't focus." The master brought him to a still pond and dropped a pebble into the water. "Watch," he said. They sat in silence. The ripples spread, then slowly disappeared. The pond returned to stillness. "This is your mind," the master whispered. "Let it settle. Don't chase the birds. Just let the sky return." You glance at the bowl again. A small leaf lands in it, rests lightly on the surface, then spins gently. The stars remain undisturbed. You breathe out longer this time. Not every disturbance needs to be solved. Not every thought needs to be pushed away. Some can simply float. You watch the sky darken. More stars appear. First 1, then 3, then 10, then countless. The bowl reflects them all. No competition, no favoritism, just openness. You wonder, could you live like that? Not clinging, not resisting, just receiving, reflecting, releasing. A gentle sound pulls your attention, a soft clink of porcelain behind you. A monk approaches, quietly holding 2 small cups. He offers one to you and bows. It's warm rice tea again, earthy, slightly sweet. Comfort in liquid form. You sip in silence. The monk gazes at the bowl for a long while, then says, "Most people try to gather the stars, but they are already in the bowl." You smile. There's a tenderness in that thought. You don't need to chase peace. You don't need to seek beauty. They're already reflected in the stillness you carry inside. You look up at the sky, darker now, deeper. The stars overhead seem to echo those below. A quiet symmetry, a reminder that what's above is already within. You ask yourself, what am I trying to capture that I already hold? The tea warms your chest. The breeze lifts the edge of your robe. you feel soft, real, present. The monk finishes his tea and stands. "Leave the bowl," he says gently. "It doesn't belong to anyone." You nod. "Of course it doesn't." You remain seated, watching as he disappears down the steps. You feel no rush to leave. There's something sacred in this space, not because it's rare, but because you're finally able to see it. You place your hands on your knees, then your heart, not for drama, just for gratitude. The bowl rests on its pedestal, quietly reflecting the heavens, and you reflect them too. You descend from the terrace slowly, each step a little softer than the last, as if your body knows it's entering a new layer of quiet. The sky is fully dark now, ink black and stitched with stars. No moon tonight, only the long, luminous arc of the Milky Way drawing across the sky like breath held in stillness. The path leads you back toward your room. But before you reach it, something pulls your attention. Not a sound exactly, more like a rhythm. A pulse you can feel just beneath your thoughts. You pause, turn, and follow the sense. A narrow trail slips between two large stones, marked only by the gentle bend of grass. You follow it without hesitation, not quickly, just willingly. The trail opens to a small inner courtyard, a circle of raked gravel, 3 smooth stones in the center, and a single candle burning at the far edge. It's here that the monks sit after nightfall, not to talk, not to think, just to breathe. You find a cushion already placed for you. You sit, and then you hear it, not with your ears, but in your bones, the thread of breath. It's always been there, this subtle movement. But now, without distractions, without planning or performance, it becomes everything. Inhale. Cool air brushes the tip of your nose. Exhale. Warmth leaves your chest like a sigh that's waited all day. Again, inhale, exhale. The Buddha once said, "Mindful breathing is the foundation of all awareness." And suddenly, it feels true, in a way you never quite let it before. The breath isn't just keeping you alive, it is your life, moment by moment, stitch by stitch. You don't have to breathe better, you don't have to make it deeper or smoother. Just notice. You place a hand lightly on your chest. The rise and fall is gentle, subtle, like a feather settling again and again. A story comes to you. Simple, soft, easily missed, if you weren't already sitting still. A master once told his student, "The breath is a thread that leads you home." The student asked, "Home to where?" And the master replied, "To the place where you no longer need to ask." You smile quietly, not out of humor, but out of resonance. You understand. You feel the thread winding through you, connecting every version of yourself. The one who rushed through the city, the one who folded the cracked teacup, the one who watched the yellow leaf, all breathing, all still here. You shift slightly, not to fix anything, but to soften. Your spine aligns naturally, like bamboo, strong yet supple. Your jaw loosens, your shoulders release. Inhale, exhale. You begin to see the breath as more than function. It's a friend, a rhythm keeper, a guide that never rushes, never judges. It waits, always. Even when you ignore it, it stays. Even when you forget, it remembers. You wonder, what would it feel like to trust the breath completely, not just in meditation, but in moments of fear, in anger, in loneliness, in joy? You let that thought dissolve into the air around you. The candle flickers gently, not from wind, there is none, but from the breath of the space itself. It's alive in here, alive in you, and you begin to hear other breaths, not out loud, but as a shared field of presence. The monks in the surrounding rooms, the cats curled up in corners, the trees even rising and falling in their own quiet rhythm. One breath in different forms. You sit longer than you planned, though planning has long left the building. You're simply being breathed now. You feel the edges of your awareness stretch, not in an out-of-body way, but in an all-of-body way. You are your hands, your feet, your ears, your breath. The thread is weaving through all of it, connecting you to this night, this temple, this whole quiet world. And somewhere inside that breath, a question arises. Not loud, not demanding, just present. If you are your breath, what happens when you truly return to it? Not just to breathe, but to be the breathing. You don't answer. You just inhale again. Exhale. The gravel beneath you remains perfectly still. The candle burns lower, casting long, soft shadows on the stones, and your breath continues like a river you didn't know you'd been floating in your entire life. You open your eyes slowly, not to leave the stillness, but to witness it. The world hasn't changed, but you have, slightly, gently. You bow to your breath, not with formality, just with love. Then you rise, not suddenly, but naturally, as breath rises. As day becomes night, you step back into the path, the thread of breath still winding quietly within you. You are not chasing it, you are walking with it, and it is enough. The night deepens, but instead of becoming heavier, it grows lighter in its silence, like the world is exhaling with you, emptying, softening, smiling in its own mysterious way. Crickets now hum in the background, a gentle chorus that never quite aligns and never needs to. As you walk toward the edge of the garden, the path bends near the storage sheds, where the monks keep tools and firewood. But tonight, something feels different. You sense a presence before you see it, A pair of glowing eyes blink from the shadows beneath a low wooden shelf. And then out steps a fox, small ginger, and entirely unbothered by your presence. Its tail, bushy and precise, swishes once before it turns and trots ahead. You follow. Because of course you do. You trail the fox through narrow footpaths and over a shallow bridge. It moves without fear, occasionally glancing back to be sure you're still coming. At one point, it pauses beside a stone statue of the Buddha, lifts one paw, and sneezes. And for some reason you laugh, softly, not a belly laugh, more like a sudden puff of joy escaping your chest. The fox looks back and blinks slowly, as if in approval. The laughing fox, the monks sometimes call him, not because he cackles or jokes, but because legend says he once made the silent monk laugh out loud just once. Just once. And that was enough to earn him eternal entry into temple grounds. You reach a quiet clearing with a flat, mossy rock in the middle. The fox hops up onto it, curls its tail around its body, and lies down as though this were a throne. You sit on the ground before it, cross-legged, uncertain who is observing whom. The fox stares at you. You stare back, and something about the moment is so perfectly absurd, so delightfully still and strange, that you feel laughter rise again. Not forced, not nervous, just joy for no reason. The Buddha once said, "When you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky." You're not quite tilting your head back yet, but you feel it. There's a story here too. Of course there is. They say the silent monk was once sitting in the garden when the fox approached him with a stick in its mouth. It dropped the stick at the monk's feet and waited. The monk picked it up, held it for a while, then tossed it gently away. The fox didn't chase it. It simply looked at the monk and smiled. The monk smiled back. And in that moment, the two beings, man and animal, shared a joke no one else could hear. A joke with no punchline. A laugh with no reason. Just delight. Just being. You wonder, how often do I miss the sacred, waiting for it to look serious? The fox closes its eyes, curls tighter, and begins to doze. No sermon, no message, just sleep. As if to say, that's enough wisdom for tonight. You rise gently, brushing off your robe, and bow, not deeply, just slightly. The fox doesn't move, but its tail flicks once lazily. You take it as a blessing. As you return to the path, you still feel the smile tugging at the edges of your mouth. You pass the same Buddha statue again, and this time, you notice the faintest upward curve at the mouth. Had it always been there? Or is it smiling with you? The temple has returned to its quiet hum. Paper lanterns flicker faintly. Somewhere, a distant kettle begins to boil a sound as soft as breath. You sit again this time on the porch outside your room. You place your palms on your knees, feeling the warmth of your body, the echo of laughter still residing somewhere behind your ribs. And you wonder, could enlightenment come not just in silence or stillness, but also in joy, in shared mischief, in quiet giggles under moonlight? You breathe. The night answers not with words, but with stars. The fox somewhere out there is curled up and sleeping, perhaps dreaming of sticks that never need to be fetched. And you're still smiling because tonight you remembered something rare, that sometimes the deepest truth arrives not in thunder, but in a chuckle. The night presses on, rich and vast. You stay seated for a while longer, the smile from the laughing fox still tugging softly at your heart. It's a strange comfort, this temple world, not because it tries to erase anything, but because it allows everything. Silence, laughter, stillness, motion. All welcome, all held. Eventually you rise, stretch, and wander again. No agenda, just breath and feet and open sky. You pass the main hall, dim and closed for the night, and follow a narrow corridor that wraps behind the eastern wall. Here, tucked between the ancient stone well and a stand of whispering bamboo, you find an alcove you've never noticed before. There's a bench, a small lantern unlit, and a polished metal mirror resting upright on a stand. Not a decorative mirror, no etchings, no adornment, just a smooth, circular face. It catches the starlight, and for a moment you see a reflection, not your features exactly, but the outline of your presence. You sit before it. The air here is different, thick, with quiet, like a sealed envelope. You lean forward and look, and what greets you is not your face, not your hair, not your expression, but something deeper, the mirror with no face. They say this mirror once belonged to the silent monk, not for grooming, not for vanity, but for seeing without seeing. The surface reflects what is there, but also what you bring to it. At first, you do what anyone would do. You look for yourself, the shape of your chin, your mun, your eyes. But the longer you stare, the less the mirror gives you back. Your face begins to blur, not in a ghostly way, but in a softening, like fampi rising from a lake. What remains is presence, the fact of being without the burden of identity. The Buddha once said, "In the seeing, there is only the seen, no seer, no subject, just what is." You sit with that. It's unsettling at first, to not see yourself, to not be reminded of who you think you are. but gradually there's a peace in it, like taking off a mask that you didn't realize was tight. You notice your breath again. It's the one part of you the mirror cannot capture, and yet it's the truest part of you. Moving, rising, vanishing. A story arises, whispered in the wind, like an old friend. There once was a monk who asked his master, "Who am I without my name?" The master held up a mirror. The monk said, "But I see nothing." "Exactly," the master replied. "Now you're beginning to see." You chuckle softly. The lesson lands not like a lecture, but like a feather. You lean back and look around. The bamboo shifts gently in the wind. The stars do not ask your name. The night does not need your resume. Everything simply receives you. And you wonder, who would I be if I stopped trying to be someone? Not in a dissolving way, not in a self-erasing way, but in a freeing way, like becoming air, or echo, or reflection. You return your gaze to the mirror, still blank, still calm. You notice the reflection of the lantern, the curve of the bench, the hint of sky above. It sees without choosing, accepts without naming. It offers no comment, and perhaps that's its greatest gift. The mirror does not care if you are joyful or weary, radiant or rumpled. It simply reflects. And maybe that's what the silent monk understood. That the truest teachings aren't the ones you grasp, but the ones that hold you gently when you stop holding so tightly to yourself. You close your eyes. The mirror is still there, but you are no longer seeking your shape within it. You are not a name. You are not a story. You are not the parts you polish or protect. You are the awareness that sees, and that is enough. You open your eyes again. The mirror now holds only the night sky, a few stars, a whisper of cloud. You bow to it, not as an object, but as a reminder. Then you stand slowly and leave the alcove. The bamboo brushes your sleeve on the way out, like a subtle blessing. You carry no face now, only presence, and the night receives you fully. You walk slowly through the cool dark, the mirror's stillness echoing inside you. The air carries the scent of pine smoke, now faint, earthy, like something old being gently released. Somewhere nearby, a fire must be burning, but not for warmth, for ritual. Drawn by that scent, you turn toward the lower grove where tall cedars stand in quiet council. Their trunks thick with time, their roots woven like stories beneath the soil. And there, at the grove's edge, you see it, a small stone circle. In the center, a bowl of white ash, cold, clean, serene. Someone has been here recently. The ground is undisturbed, but a single white feather rests delicately on top of the ashes. You step closer, almost holding your breath. The bowl seems to hum with quiet. Not sound, but presence. The kind of stillness you feel in your chest when something real is happening, and no one is explaining it. You kneel. The feather shifts slightly in the breeze, so light it barely moves the ash beneath it. It floats at the edge of falling, yet doesn't, as though held by something more than gravity. The feather in the ashes. You don't touch it, you only watch, the Buddha once said. Just as a flame blown out by the wind goes to rest and cannot be defined, so too the enlightened one goes to rest and cannot be defined. And here it is in image, a life burned clean, and something light, something new rising from it. You sit with that. Maybe this is what the silent monk meant when he said nothing. Maybe this was his answer to sorrow. Not denial, not escape, but the long, slow release of what no longer needed to be carried. There's a story passed between novices here. A woman came to the temple in grief. Her home, her past, everything lost to fire. She brought nothing with her, only silence. She sat before the monk for 3 days without speaking. On the 4th day, he handed her a small bowl of ashes. No words, just the offering. She held it, wept, then laughed, a clear, quiet laugh, like something old had just exhaled inside her. He then placed a single white feather into the bowl and bowed. From that day forward, she swept the temple paths every morning, humming gently to herself. Not healed, but whole. You sit in front of the ashes, now wondering what you've been carrying that's ready to burn, not in destruction, but in return. You breathe slowly, watching your own thoughts rise and fall. Some sharp, some soft, some worth keeping, others already ash. You don't need fire to do this. Only honesty, only breath, only time. You look again at the feather. So light, so simple. Yet it speaks of letting go, of rebirth without announcement, of leaving space where something once was. You wonder, can we be light without losing who we are? Can we burn away the weight and keep the essence? The wind shifts, and a few flecks of ash lift into the air, swirling like whispers. You watch still and wide-eyed. Not everything that burns is lost. Some things once burned become clearer. You rise slowly and bow to the bowl, not in sadness, not in reverence, but in recognition. You've known ashes, but maybe you're only now beginning to notice the feather. The sky above is clouded now, not stormy, just veiled, as if giving you a gentle pause from the stars, a moment to look inward instead. You walk back through the trees, feeling something different in your steps. Lighter, yes, but also more grounded. Like the ground itself is receiving you more gently. Perhaps that's what happens when you stop pretending to be whole and simply are. You reach the lantern path again and notice how the flames flicker, not because they're fragile, but because they're alive. The monks say that all things that flicker still shine. So do you. You look at your hands, the way they've carried so much over the years. You stretch your fingers. Open your palms. Something old falls away quietly, without ceremony. And in its place, a breath, a beginning. The wind carries the scent of damp stone and night blossoms as you leave the ashes behind. You walk slowly now, not because you're tired, but because there's something sacred about this part of the evening, this stretch of time where the day no longer belongs to waking and the night hasn't quite welcomed dreaming. You follow a path you don't remember noticing before one that loops around the back of the meditation hall and disappears into a stand of tall grass. There's no lantern here, just the moonlight filtering through the reeds. Then you hear it, not a sound exactly, more like the memory of one. You freeze not from fear, but from alertness. Your ears reach for the source. Footsteps faint, barely there. A shuffle on gravel, a brush of cloth. But when you turn, the path behind you is empty. No shadow, no shape. Just the silence that follows something passing. You wait. The sound comes again. You look down. Nothing. You kneel and place your ear near the path. Stillness. But somehow, you know you've just heard the sound of no footsteps. There's a story told only once a year here during the quiet festival, when the monks fast from speech and walk only barefoot. It's said the silent monk once walked the entire temple without touching the ground. Impossible, the novices say, but the older monks only smile. They say his steps made no sound, not because he hovered above the earth, but because he walked in such complete harmony that the earth never needed to respond. His presence was a question with no pressure, a breath without weight. You stand again listening. The sound is gone now, but its echo lingers not in the air, but in your bones. You've known this kind of silence before. In a room after someone has left. In the still pause before an answer. In a long hug that says more than words. The Buddha once said, "It is better to travel well than to arrive." And maybe this is what he meant, to walk with such softness that even the world forgets to resist. You think about your own footsteps, rushing to appointments, pacing with anxiety, stomping in frustration, dancing in joy. How much of your life has been marked by the noise of your going? And what would it mean to walk softly, not just in the world, but in your relationships, your work, your thoughts? You remember a moment from years ago, stepping quietly into a room where someone you loved was sleeping. You didn't want to wake them. You just wanted to be there. So you tiptoed, held your breath, and became part of the hush. Maybe you were more present in that moment than in all your loudest ones. You let the thought drift like smoke. Here now, in the grass-lined path, you try something. You walk slowly, heel to toe, rolling each foot into the earth, listening not for the sound, but for the lack of it. The ground accepts you. The grass sways, but does not part. And for a breathless second, you feel it, that sensation of moving without trace, not erasing, just not disturbing. There's a peace in that, not being unnoticed, but being in tune. You wonder, what would happen if I moved through my day like this, without needing to leave a mark, but trusting the presence itself was enough? You smile, there's no answer. But the question itself is a kind of walking. You reach a clearing with flat stones arranged in a spiral. You follow the pattern inward, slowly, placing each foot with care. The spiral leads you to a simple stone at the center where you sit. No ceremony, no audience, just you and the echo of absence. You close your eyes. The footsteps still echo somewhere nearby, or maybe within, a rhythm that doesn't demand to be heard. You remember now a final whisper from a very old monk on his last day at the temple. Walk so gently. He said that your presence feels like a blessing, not a footprint. You breathe that in, and when you rise again, you step softly, not to erase yourself, but to honor everything you walk upon. And as you return to the path, you hear nothing beneath your feet, but you feel everything. You rise from the spiral stones and step once more onto the path, your body wrapped, now in stillness, your footsteps nearly forgotten by the ground beneath. The night is deep, but not dark. The kind of night that glows gently from within, stars muted behind a soft layer of cloud, as if the sky itself has decided to be modest tonight. As you walk past the temple's eastern slope, you notice something strange. A single cloud. It rests low, just above the ground, nestled between the hill's ridge and a small grove of plum trees, not floating quickly through the sky like the others, not fading, just lingering. You stop. Look again. Yes. The others have moved on, carried by the night wind. But this one, the cloud that stayed, remains. It's small, pale, barely more than a breath made visible. And yet, it holds its place, like it has something left to do. You sit down on a flat rock, your eyes fixed gently on the cloud. It hovers, undisturbed, and there's something about it, its persistence, its gentleness, that quiets you even further. The Buddha once said, "Drop by drop, the water jar is filled." And maybe this cloud understands that too. You watch it for what could be minutes or hours. Time doesn't seem to apply here. The cloud doesn't shift dramatically. It doesn't dissolve. It simply is, present, refusing to be rushed. You think of times in your life when you wanted to drift away, when things were uncomfortable or uncertain or slow, when staying felt too heavy, too vulnerable. But this cloud, this gentle body of moisture and breath, It stays, not because it must, but because it chooses to. There's a story the older monks sometimes tell, especially to those who arrive hoping to find answers quickly. A young monk, eager and full of questions, asked his teacher, "How long must I stay here before I am wise?" The teacher pointed to a cloud outside and said, "Stay as long as that cloud." The boy groaned, "But it may drift for days," the master said, "or it may disappear in moments. But either way, wisdom only visits those willing to wait." You smile, letting that settle into your breath. Sometimes staying is the hardest thing. Staying in a difficult conversation, staying in your meditation when the restlessness rises, staying with yourself on a sleepless night when all you want is distraction. But perhaps like the cloud, you don't have to force change. You just have to remain softly, openly, completely. You look again. The cloud hasn't moved. It simply shimmers faintly in the moonlight, barely distinguishable from the mist around it. A part of the landscape, yet separate enough to notice. You ask yourself, what part of me is still waiting to drift? And what part already knows how to stay? A breeze stirs through the trees, lifting a few petals from the plum blossoms. They float across your vision like snow. And for a moment, you think the cloud might break apart. But it doesn't. It just absorbs the breeze and remains. You close your eyes for a moment, mirroring it. Not trying to become the cloud, but trying to allow like the cloud. You feel your own emotions shifting beneath your chest. Memories, thoughts, the longing to be somewhere else. But you don't chase them. You don't leave. You stay. There's power in that. You recall something the silent monk was once overheard whispering to the wind. Let those who seek to be great learn to remain small. Remaining isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's strength in its quietest form. You breathe again. Inhale, exhale. Still here. You open your eyes. The cloud is beginning to dissolve now, just a little. Fading at the edges. Not dramatically, just naturally. As if its time here is complete. You watch it go, not with soin, but with gratitude. You didn't need it to last forever. You only needed to be with it while it lasted. Like most things, you rise slowly and continue walking along the ridge. The wind lifts around you again, stronger now, as if rewarding your patience. The temple lights begin to sparkle through the trees like stars that decided to rest on earth for a while. And you wonder, what might shift inside me if I stay just one breath longer than I'm comfortable with? The answer doesn't come, but the question feels like enough. The path curves downward, now leading you back toward the center of the temple grounds. The night thickens with quiet, not heavy, but close, like a blanket around your shoulders. The cloud is gone, but the peace of its presence remains, and so do you. You descend the slope, the earth soft beneath your feet, and follow the lantern-lit path back toward the temple's heart. Each flame glows like a pause in the dark, not pushing it back, just softening its edges. The hush is complete now. No foxes, no footfalls, no wind. Just the stillness that comes when everything has said exactly enough, and then you arrive. A low wooden gate, half hidden behind a screen of juniper branches, opens into a circular clearing, bare and precise. Inside is nothing but stones, large and small, smooth and rough, scattered as if by intention and chance at once. Some are upright, like listening bodies. Others are low, like sleeping thoughts. There is no pattern here. And yet, you feel one. You step in. This is the garden of still stones. There are no flowers, no rakes, no pebbles arranged in swirls. Only these quiet forms, unmoving, unblinking, completely present. You sit down near the edge, knees folding beneath you. You don't need to be told what to do. You just know. You sit, you breathe, and you listen to the silence of the stones. At first, there's nothing, just the usual mind noise still lingering from earlier paths. Questions, images, maybe a line of a song you thought you forgot. But the longer you sit, the more you feel it, the energy of stillness, not deadness, not absence, but presence so deep it no longer needs to move. The Buddha once said, "Be like a rock, unshaken by wind, by rain, by praise, by blame." And here among these silent sentinels that feels real, you study the stones without naming them. No need to say round or tall or weathered. They just are. And being seems to be enough. You wonder how long they've been here, decades, centuries, or maybe they just arrived with you, called into form by the exact moment you needed them. A story floats gently into memory. There once was a monk who refused to move during storms. When asked why, he said, "If I move every time the sky gets loud, I'll forget what I am." They called him the still stone. You imagine being like that strong, not because of resistance, but because of surrender to time, to change, to presence. You shift slightly and feel the coolness of the earth beneath your hands. The stones do not speak, but you hear them anyway. They say, "Sit longer than you want to." They say, "Let the world pass by," without trying to follow. They say you are already part of this. You don't try to make meaning. You just sit with them, as one of them, and suddenly, you're no longer separate from the stillness. You're not a visitor. You're part of the arrangement. The breath slows. The thoughts soften. The you carry around the performer, the planner, the doubter, steps aside, and all that's left is the sitting. A gentle knowing rises inside. Stillness isn't what happens when nothing moves. It's what happens when you stop trying to move away from what is. You look at the stones again, not one of them, tries to be beautiful. And yet they are. Not one of them has achieved anything. And yet they are complete. You ask yourself, can I stop chasing long enough to become still? Not forever. Just now. A leaf falls, not dramatically, just a soft descent through the dark. It lands on one of the smaller stones and stays. Neither of them minds. You smile without effort. You've learned from foxes and feathers and scrolls and Priyeth, and now from stones. The kind of wisdom that cannot be written, only sat with, only heard when all other noises have left. You bow forehead, lightly touching the earth, and rise with care. The stones say nothing, but they nod in their way. And as you step back out into the path, you feel their stillness echo inside you. Not heavy, not loud, just deep and quietly eternal. The night has deepened to its most hushed and velvet hour. The stars above scattered like grains of salt across indigo silk shimmer, quietly, without urgency. You walk with soft footsteps still carrying the weightless echo of the garden of stones within you. There's a faint light ahead, flickering behind the rice paper walls of the communal kitchen. A low hum of warmth radiates outward, subtle, inviting. It's not loud, not busy, just a steady glow that says someone is still awake. You follow it. Inside, a single monk stands near the hearth, tending to a small pot. He doesn't turn, doesn't speak, just stirs with slow, practiced grace. The room smells like jasmine rice steamed gently and a hint of ginger. Without needing to ask, you sit at the low table. The monk brings over a bowl, a simple bowl of warm rice, and places it before you with 2 hands and a slight bow. Then he pours a little water into a wooden cup, places it beside the rice, and sits across from you. He doesn't say, "Eat slowly." He doesn't say, "Be grateful." But somehow, you hear those words anyway, without sound, without command. This is the smile in the rice. You pick up the bowl warm against your fingers and lift the first bite to your lips. It's soft, fragrant, simple, and perfect. The Buddha once said, "Let us live simply so others may simply live." You take another bite, chew slowly, feel the grain dissolve into nourishment. And you remember, all day the temple has given you lessons through leaves and stones, through bells and robes. But this bowl of rice, this might be the gentlest teaching of all. You don't need to understand anything right now. You only need to eat. Slowly, presently, 1 grain at a time. The monk smiles faintly as he eats, not watching you, but somehow with you. Like he knows this is the first meal you've truly tasted in a while. You wonder how many times you've eaten on autopilot, fork to mouth while scrolling through headlines, finishing your plate without ever noticing the food. But this rice, This rice asks you to be here. It tastes not just of nourishment, but of care. You can almost feel the hands that washed it, the soil it grew from the sun it soaked in. You ask yourself, what if I treated every small act like this bowl of rice? What if nothing were ordinary? What if enough was truly enough? The monk gently places his empty bowl aside and pours hot water over the rice stuck to the sides. He swirls it softly, then drinks it, his final gesture of respect. You do the same. The warmth fills you, not like a meal, but like a blessing. And then he speaks only 2 words: sleep well. It's not instruction. It's not a goodbye. It's a gift. You nod and bow and leave. Outside, the cool air meets your cheeks. The night is nearly complete now. You walk slowly back to your room, cradling the feeling of warm rice in your belly and the monk's quiet kindness in your heart. You step through the sliding door and light the smallest candle. The walls glow gently. Your cushion waits. Your blanket, folded carefully, smells of cedar. You sit for one final breath before bed, letting the day settle around you like snow. And there, in the soft quiet of your room, you smile, not because something amazing happened, but because nothing needed to. You are full. You are still. You are here. You lie back on your cushion, your body heavy in the best possible way, like the weight of stillness has finally found a home inside you. The candle flickers gently on the small altar shelf. Its light leans and sways, then steadies. You watch it from where you are, too comfortable to move, too at peace to speak. The temple is asleep. The wind has gone quiet. Even the night seems to hold its breath, but there is one story left. One presence still waiting to be seen. You sit up slowly and gather your robe around your shoulders. A quiet pull, familiar by now, leads you once more from your room. You walk through shadowed halls and under soft beams, past doors you've passed before, until you reach a garden you've never truly entered. There, under a large, ancient pine, sits the silent monk. He is real, and yet not quite physical, not a ghost, not a vision, more like the embodiment of the quiet you've been walking with all along. He does not turn to face you. He does not speak, but you feel him in the marrow of your bones, like a tuning fork you didn't know you carried, now suddenly humming in response. This is the silent monk who heard the world. You sit beside him, not out of reverence, not out of awe, but because it feels like the most natural thing in the world. He is old, but not withered, still, but not stiff. His eyes remain closed, but somehow you know he hears everything. The stars, the shift of breath, the tiny rhythm of a beetle moving through moss, your presence beside him, and he does not need to react because he is already one with it all. You think of the quote that's guided every step of this journey. Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace, and yet he speaks not even one, because even that is too much. The stillness around him is not absence, it is fullness, overflowing, complete. He once listened to the sorrow in a child's silence and understood it. He once heard the joy in a cat's purr and bowed in thanks. He once sat through an earthquake and wept not for fear, but for the beauty of the earth's deep voice. You want to ask him something, anything, but your lips do not move, because your question, whatever it was, has already melted into the quiet between you. You breathe, he breathes, and the world continues, without rush, without plan, just as it is. You close your eyes, and in that moment, you too hear the world, not as noise, not as chaos, but as music, the soft shush of trees, the creak of old wood, the memory of a bell that never rings, the breath of someone asleep halfway around the world, and your own breath braided into it all. You sit there with him 1 minute, or maybe 1 lifetime, until the night begins to turn. When you open your eyes again, he is gone, or perhaps he was never separate. You feel no need to search, because now you understand he did not carry a secret. He was the listening, and now, so are you. You walk back to your room in silence, not because there is nothing to say, but because everything has already been said. You lie down, drawing your blanket up to your chin, and close your eyes. The wind moves again, gentle and low, brushing the temple walls like a final blessing. You are not seeking now. You are not waiting. You are simply here, and somewhere in the deep quiet, you hear it. Not a bell, not a voice, just the sound of everything and nothing becoming one, and you sleep. And now, all teachings, given all paths, walked, we rest together in the final softness of night. There's nothing more to hold, nothing left to learn tonight. Let the edges of thought melt like sugar in warm tea. Let the stories settle like dust in a quiet room. Your breath is slow now, the world around you. Temple stones, stars. The silent monk dissolves gently into stillness. And what remains is you. Not the you that has to decide things. Not the one that remembers or plans. Just the being that breathes softly, effortlessly. The wind rustles in distant branches, and you do not reach for it. The past drifts in and out, and you don't chase it. Everything finds its place, like leaves on a pond, like clouds in an evening sky. You have sat with wisdom in many forms. Tonight, cracked teacups, footprints in dust, the stillness of stones, and the smile tucked in a bowl of rice. Each one led you back to yourself, not the self that performs, but the self that simply is. Now let your body grow heavier with kindness. Let your heartbeat soften into rhythm. Let the silence come closer, closer, until it tucks itself into every corner of your thoughts. And as the last candle in the temple fades to smoke, may you drift into rest like the quietest leaf falling from the gentlest branch. You are home now, in this breath, in this peace, in this sleep.